Of a quorum.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilor Baker. Councilor Campbell.
Here.
Councilor Siomo. Present. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Asabi George. Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flynn. Here. Councilor Garrison. Councilor Janey. Present. Councilor McCarthy. Here. Councilor O'Malley. Present. Councilor Wu. Present. And Councilor Zakam. We have a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I've been informed by the clerk that we have a quorum. At this time, we're going to bring up our clergy for the day, and Councilor Flynn. Thank you. At this time, I ask all guests and councilors to please rise. Councilor Flynn will introduce our clergy for the day, who will bring us through an invocation. I ask everyone to remain standing as Councilor Flynn leads us through the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam President. It's an honor for me and for my colleague, Councilor Kim Janey, to introduce and present Reverend Jay Williams. He serves as the lead pastor at Union Church in the South End. He obtained his PhD at Harvard University and works closely across the city on issues that impact the homeless, the poor, the hungry, working families across the city. He continues to provide exceptional leadership, making sure every voice in the city is heard. It's an honor for myself and Councilor Janey to present to you Reverend Williams.
Thank you. First, my appreciation to Councilor Flynn and to Councilor Janey for this gracious and generous invitation, which was extended to me earlier this month at the city's 49th annual Martin Luther King Memorial Breakfast, which my congregation co-hosts. To President Campbell and the honorable members of the council, I thank you for this opportunity to stand before you to offer the invocation for today's meeting. I'm also grateful to my members of my congregation, Chantel Charles and Kempton Fleming, who work here in City Hall, for their presence today. Every week I get to stand before the wonderful people of Union United Methodist Church in the South End, a congregation that has been a beacon of love and hope and justice and service in Boston since 1796. Last year, we celebrated our bicentennial of our 1818 incorporation, and this year we celebrate 70 years in the South End, having previously lived on Beacon Hill in the West End and Roxbury. And Union's reason to exist, our calling, is pretty simple. As the gospel spiritual goes, we are determined to love everybody and treat everybody right. And Union's history and present is a testament to this calling. A calling. Through the invocation, we call the Spirit into this place. Invocation, it means to call in. It is an opening prayer that invites the Holy One, known by many names, to dwell among us and to be present in this place. So before anything else, the invocation begins the work. It signals that we all believe in something bigger, something greater than ourselves. Whether we go to church or to temple or to synagogue or to mosque or no place at all, we all gather here today because we are people of faith. We believe in a tomorrow that is somehow more perfect than our today. Seems to me that we gather because we know that all we see is not all that can be. So we gather to make that vision a reality, what we feel in our hearts and what we see in our mind's eye. So vocation, or the work to which we are called, and invocation, it shares the same root, the same basis. Josephine Baker, that great entertainer who refused to perform in segregated audiences, described vocation as what you do with joy, as if you had fire in your heart. So on this cold Boston day, may our hearts be set afire, ablaze with a passion for equity and justice. As we call in the holy and all that is good within us, we call ourselves then to the task that is before us. We cover this day in prayer and we order our minds toward unending grace, and we give voice to our heart's deepest desires for a more excellent way of living, and we passionately commit ourselves to this pursuit. So we pray. Oh God, our help in ages past and our hope for years to come, before we ask for anything, we want to say thank you, God, for everything. Before we arose this morning, you were. You were shining light. You were bringing snow. You were giving life to the world. And for this, we are grateful. Oh yes, you woke us up this morning and you started us on our way. Now be with us here in this place at this time for the facing of this day. Set this council and indeed the entire city of Boston to the work of your love in establishing the new creation. Be with Councilors Campbell and George and Flaherty and Garrison and Wu and Edwards and Flynn and Baker and McCarthy and O'Malley and Janey and Zachem and Siomo. Yes, we call these counselors by name because the work is difficult and often thankless. So we remember them in our prayers, and we pray that they might carry the mantle of leadership well. Let their deliberations and their business be of one mind and one spirit, united for the creation of a better Boston for all of her people. Set them to this task, dear God, and to nothing else. Grant your wisdom, compassion, and mercy to this council so that they might be filled with grace, holiness, and justice. Give them courage and fortitude and the will to do always what is right. Keep forever before these elected servants those who you never forget, the most vulnerable and marginalized, the oppressed and the brokenhearted, the poor, the homeless, and the hungry. And let not our bodies grow weary or our hearts grow cold until all your people have warm meals by day and safe havens by night. Dear God, in a world full of hatred, send your spirit of love. In a divided nation, marked by government shutdowns and desires to build walls of separation, send a spirit of reconciliation to build bridges of justice and harmony. In a city of rising costs and growing wealth disparities, send a spirit of equity, equality, and economic justice. During days so full of violence, send your spirit of peace. Gracious God, send your spirit of compassion and of courage. Come, divine present, holy God, holy guide, and fill this room. So let us begin again the work and the calling to creating that beloved community. In the name of the one who loves us into freedom, let it be so. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you. Thank you again. At this time, we have a special presentation by Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like the members of the Pine Street Outreach team to join me up here. While they're making their way up, I'll get started. Today, I am honored to recognize the Pine Street Outreach team. A few months ago, I had the privilege of participating in a ride-along with Mike, Jason, Margie, and Lindia. The temperatures that night were below freezing, very much like today, and we met many individuals. The outreach team met each person with respect and love. They knew many of the individuals we met. They knew their names, their stories, their circumstances, and how long and why they were still on our streets. As we made our way through different parts of the city and talked to many of our residents experiencing homelessness, one thing was clear. Mike, Jason, and Margie were loved by these people. They were the connection to not just a cup of soup or warmth, they were a connection to a warm smile and a conversation. Pine Street Inn is the only organization offering night street outreach in Boston. Mike, Jason, and Margie are the true stewards of our community. They go out when we are all asleep to build connections and trust with individuals that are on the street at night. It is through trust and relationships that many chronically homeless individuals have moved from the streets to permanent housing and towards independence. I'd like to thank them today, especially because tonight marks the 39th annual homeless census in the city of Boston. And although there will be hundreds of people out tonight interacting and connecting with those that are facing homelessness and experiencing homelessness, this crew right here, and there's, I think, 2 crews. This is the crew, my favorite crew. There are 2 crews through the Pine Street Inn, but they're out every single night. And they're connecting with some of our most vulnerable residents in the city of Boston. So I want to make sure on behalf of the City Council that we thank and recognize them. And I think Mike is going to share a few words about their work here in the city of Boston. Mike?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Anissa. Thank you to the City Council here for having us. Thank you to D&D, one of our funders who provides great leadership and support. Just a few words, as Anissa was saying. The Pine Street vans are an integral part of the work that's done in the city in engaging folks that are unsheltered, that are sleeping on the streets. We've seen a 24% reduction in street homelessness over the last few years, and that's been a lot of work by the Pine Street Outreach Team. We have a day team that covers the city, all of Boston proper, Dorchester, Roxbury, and JP. The overnight teams are here with Jason and Margie, and this is really about the work that they do, the work they commit to day in and day out. You know, we believe we're going to eradicate homelessness through housing first thinking and action, and that's part of our mission, vision, and values work at Pine Street, led by Lindia Downey, our CEO, who is simply amazing. So it's a genuine thank you for having us here today, and it's just incredible to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. I have, on behalf of all the members of the Boston City Council, a citation or an official resolution just recognizing your dedication and your commitment to giving a voice to the city's most vulnerable and your advocacy to end homelessness. I appreciate you, and I think all of our colleagues are going to come up and also say thanks, and we're going to take a great group picture. Come on up. Step up. We're going to take a picture. The paparazzi comes out. We'll take a big picture. Step up.
Okay.
They see us enough.
Ready?
You say anything to me? Oh, good. Okay. All right, big smiles. Oh, one more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My cats.
Stand drive in the city.
That's right, he is. Madam Clerk, if you could amend the attendance record to reflect that Councilor Edwards is here, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Garrison, as well as Councilor Zakam. I think our buzzer wasn't working, so we apologize. Thank you. Oh, he's back. Let us also amend the attendance record to reflect that Councilor Baker is back, and it's great to see him back. Moving on to the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last council meeting will stand approved. You have corrections to make to the minutes? Oh, I think we already got you, Councilor Flaherty. Yes. Welcome back. Seeing and hearing no objections, the minutes of the last council meeting are so approved. Moving on to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Madam President, would you like me to read docket number 0209 through 0211?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Docket number 0209, message and order amending the City of Boston Code Ordinance Chapter, 17, regarding licensing and regulating shared mobility businesses, filed in the office of the City Clerk on January 28, 2019. Docket number 0210, message and order for your approval of a home rule petition to the General Court entitled Petition for a Special Law Regarding an Act Relative to Certain Affordable Housing in the South End section of the City of Boston. And docket number 0211, message and order for your approval of a home rule petition to the General Court entitled Petition for a Special Law Regarding an Act Relative to Voting Precincts in the City of Boston.
Docket 0209 through 0211 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor. Do you want to speak on one of those dockets?
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to briefly speak on docket 0209. I'm delighted that the Boston Transportation Department and the Mayor have introduced this proposal to regulate shared mobility service. This is a topic that I've been interested in for quite some time. Many of you joined me at a hearing last summer, at the end of last summer, as we brought in several of the vendors that are taking advantage of this in cities around the globe. It's really important as we talk about moving people around the city that we think of innovative ways, that we embrace innovation, but we also put up some safeguards in place. A lot of it is touched upon in this ordinance. I've read through most of it. One thing that is not contemplated in the ordinance before us is the idea of revenue sharing. And while we don't want to be overly onerous restrictions with our would-be organizations that we work with, we certainly shouldn't leave money on the table. So I look forward to a hearing. I think it's a very good positive step. Equity is something that we must make sure is included in this as well. But certainly the revenue sharing is a piece that I hope that we're able to tap into. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. And just for clarification, dockets 0209 through 0211 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations. Madam Clerk, if you could read docket 0212 through 0213 together.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 0212, message and order approving a supplemental appropriation of $1,388,154 for the Boston Public Schools to cover the impact of collective bargaining agreement between TransDev and its bus drivers on the city transportation contract with the vendor TransDev. A supplemental appropriation request for the funding was approved by the Boston School Committee and filed in the office of the City Clerk on January 28, 2019. Docket number 0213, message and order to reduce the FY19 appropriation for the reserve and collective bargaining of $1,388,154 to provide funding for the Boston Public Schools for the FY19 impact of collective bargaining agreement between vendor TransDev and its bus drivers union on the city's transportation contract with the vendor TransDev.
Dockets 0212 through 0213 will be assigned to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Madam President, would you like me to read 0214 and 15?
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Docket number 0214, message and order approving a supplemental appropriation for the Library Department and the Housing Trust Fund for FY19 in the amount of $610,254 to cover the FY19 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and AFSCME 1526. The terms of the contract are October 1st, 2016 through September 30th, 2017, and October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2020. The major provisions of the contracts include base wage increases of 2% effective the first period of January for each year and new steps starting in 2019. filed in the office of the city clerk on January 28, 2019. Docket number 0215, message in order to reduce the FY19 appropriation for the reserve for collective bargaining by $610,254 to provide funding for the library department and the housing trust fund for the FY19 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Boston and ASME 1526.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Sioma, who's Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, you have the floor.
Thank you. I rise to ask suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0214 and 0214 and 0215 concerning an appropriation for the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Boston and ASME 1526. Docket 0215 transfers the funds from the collective bargaining reserve, and docket 0214 authorizes the use of those funds to pay for the contract. This bargaining unit is made up of approximately 213 members at the Boston Public Library. The two consecutive agreements extend from October 1, 2016 through September 30th, 2020, with an estimated cost of $2.3 million over that four-year period. Some of the language items for this contract include entitlement to the city's paid parental leave benefit, a move to electronic pay stubs, changes to policies regarding grievances for promotional bypasses, and notice requirements when filling vacancies. Compensation and other items include a 2% wage increase effective January of each year of the contract, addition of new steps 8 and 9 at 1% greater than existing highest steps in January of 2019 and 2020, creation of a weekend differential, an increase in the city's contribution to the union's housing trust. The supplemental appropriation that we are authorizing today for this agreement is $610,254. The Committee on Ways and Means held 6 hearings on collective bargaining agreements in 2018. This agreement is substantively similar, following similar policy language changes, cost items, step increases, and wage increase schedule that we have seen before. As Chair of Ways and Means, I request suspension of the rules and passage of these dockets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sioma. Anyone else looking to speak on these dockets? At this time, Councilor Sioma, who's the Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of dockets 0214 and 0215. We'll take them separately. All those in favor of passage of docket 0214, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0214 has been passed. All those in favor of passage of docket 0215, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0215 has been passed.
Docket 0216, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $1,559,014.18 in the form of a grant for the 2019 Senator Charles R. Shannon, Jr. Community Safety Initiative, awarded by the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund regional and multidisciplinary approaches to combat gang violence through coordinated prevention and intervention, law enforcement, prosecution, and reintegration program.
Docket 0216 will be assigned to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice.
Docket number 0217, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $1,056,840 in the form of a grant for the Council on Aging Formula Grant Program awarded by the Mass Executive Office of Elder Affairs to be administered by the Elderly Commission. The grant will fund the continued operation of the Commission's health and housing units and related services.
Docket 0217 will be assigned to the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities.
Madam President, would you like me to read 0218 and 0219 together?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Docket number 0218, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $305,362 in the form of a grant for the FY18 Comprehensive Opioid Abuse Site-Based Program, awarded by the United States Department of Justice to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund a partnership with the Boston Public Health Commission to conduct home visits to opioid overdose survivors, linking them to appropriate services and resources. And docket number 0219, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $257,492 in the form of a grant for the FY 2018 DNA Capacity Enhancement and Backlog Reduction Program, awarded by the National Institute of Justice to be administered by the Boston Police Department. The grant will fund 2 criminalist positions, overtime, lab supplies, and continuing education expenses.
Dockets 0218 through 0219 will be assigned to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice.
Madam President, would you like me to read dockets 0220 through?
Let's do 0.
0225? I thought it was through 26, sorry.
Let's do 0220 by itself, and then we'll do the others together.
Thank you. Docket number 0220, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $124,263.36 in the form of a grant for the FY19 State Elder Lunch Program, awarded by the Massachusetts Executive Office of Elder Affairs to be administered by the Elderly Commission. The grant will fund meals for seniors in Boston.
Docket 0220 will be assigned to the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities. Madam Clerk, if we could read dockets 0221 through 0226 together.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 0221, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $106,993.76 in the form of a grant for the FY 17 VAWA STOP Grant, Year 2, awarded by the United States Department of Justice, passed through the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund a civilian domestic violence advocate who provides services for victims in Jamaica Plain and East Boston. Docket number 0222, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $56,250 in the form of a grant for the FFY19 Sustained Traffic Enforcement Program, awarded by the United States Department of Transportation, based through the Mass Executive Office, the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund the Sustained Traffic Enforcement Program, known as STEP, high visibility, year-round enforcement, using data to focus sharply on specific dates and locations where crashes occur most frequently. Docket number 0223, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $14,244.07 in the form of a grant for the FFY 17 VAWA STOP Grant, Year 2, awarded by the United States Department of Justice, passed through the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund the VAWA STOP Grant Program and is authorized by the Violence Against Women Act of 2013. The program is designed to provide financial assistance to develop and strengthen law enforcement, prosecution strategies, and strengthen victim services in the case of violent crimes against women. Docket number 0224, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $9,608.75 in the form of a grant for the Boston University Pilot Project, awarded by the Boston School of Social Work, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund research projects in partnership with Boston University and UMass Lowell to examine the Boston Police Department's response to mental and behavioral health-related calls for services in the Boston Public Schools. Docket number 0225, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $7,747.64 in the form of a grant for the FY17 Burn Justice Assistant Grant Relocation, awarded by the United States Department of Justice, passed through the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund address verification programs, activities mandated by the Massachusetts Sex Offender Registry Board. And docket number 0226, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $5,000 in the form of a grant for the Internet Crime Against Children Task Force Program Support Grant, awarded by the United States Department of Justice to the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. To be administered by the Boston Police Department, the grant will fund the reimbursement of expenses for 4 officers traveling to the 2018 Internet Crimes Against Children Conference in Orlando, Florida, from December 10th through the 12th of 2018.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor McCarthy, who's the Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, for reading all of those. I rise at this time to suspend and pass docket number 02221 through 0226. As the clerk read, all of these grant money is it's really short order. They're short ticket items, but their impact is very great, from protecting women and women's violence to civilian domestic violence advocate, to helping out on the streets regarding sustainable traffic enforcement programs, and financial assistance to develop and strengthen law enforcement regarding violence against women. These are all incredibly important issues that are on the forefront in our city, and I rise to respectfully request the suspension and passage of these documents.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. At this time, Councilor McCarthy, who's the Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of dockets 0221 through 0226. Given the small financial dollar amount. So I'm going to take them separately, and we'll take a vote on each of them separately. For docket 0221, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0221 has been passed. For docket 0222, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0222 has been passed. For docket 0223, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0223 has been passed. For passage of docket 0224, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Docket 0224 has been passed. For docket 0225, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0225 has been passed. And for docket 0226, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0226 has been passed. Moving on to reports of public officers and others. Madam Clerk, if we could read docket 0227 through docket 0247, that would be great.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 0227. Notice is received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Timothy Cyber as a member of the Living Wage Advisory Committee for a term expiring November 21st, 2021. Docket number 0228, notice is received from the Mayor of the appointment of Kyra Fox as a member of the Boston Groundwater Trust for a term expiring November 1st, 2020. Docket number 0229, notice is received from the Mayor of the appointment of Giselle Guerrero as a trustee of the charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for a term expiring on May 1st, 2022. Docket number 0230, notice was received from the Mayor of the appointment of Xavier Savage as a trustee of the charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for a term expiring on May 1st, 2021. Docket number 0231, notice is received from the mayor of the appointment of Reverend William Dickerson as the trustee of charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for a term expiring May 1st, 2020. Docket number 0232, notice was received from the mayor of the appointment of Trin Nguyen as the trustee of charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for term expiring May 1st, 2021. Docket number 0233, notice was received from the mayor of the appointment of Midori Morikawa as a trustee of the charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for a term expiring May 1st, 2021. Docket number 0234, notice was received from the mayor of the appointment of Mary Marshall as the trustee of the charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for a term expiring May 1st, 2022. Docket number 0235, notice was received from the mayor of the appointment of Joyce Linehan as the trustee of charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for a term expiring May 1st, 2020. Docket number 0236, notice was received from the mayor of the appointment of John Barrows as a trustee of the charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for a term expiring May 1st, 2020. Docket number 0237, notice was received from the mayor of the appointment of Jerome Smith as the trustee of the charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for a term expiring May 1st, 2020. Docket number 0239, notice was received from the mayor of the appointment of Fazza Sharif as a trustee of the charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for a term expiring May 1st, 2022. Docket number 0240, notice is received from the mayor of the appointment of Alexandra Valdez as a trustee of the charitable donations for inhabitants of Boston for a term expiring on May 1st, 2022. Docket number 0241, notice was received from the mayor of his absence from the city from 6 a.m. on Thursday, January 17th, 2019, until 7:20 p.m. on Friday, January 18th, 2019. 0242, notice was received from the mayor of his absence from the city from 7 a.m. on Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019, until 4 p.m. on Friday, January 25th, 2019. Docket number 0243, communication was received from Brian P. Golden, Director of the Boston Planning and Development Agency, regarding proposed minor modifications to the South End Urban Renewal Plan, project number Mass R-56, with respect to Parcel 5. Docket number 0244, communication was received from Sally D. Glora, City Auditor, regarding the City of Boston's fiscal 2018 comprehensive annual financial report and basic financial statements. Docket number 0245, communication was received from Keegan Worland, LLP, regarding NSTAR Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, EFSB 14-4A/DPU, 14-153A/14154A of the Notice of Adjudication, Notice of Public Content Hearing regarding the Energy Facilities Sitting Board. 0246, communication was received from the city clerk of the filing of the Boston Redevelopment Authority of the First Amendment to the project and decision of the Old Colony Phase 3A, Chapter 121A project. And docket number 0247, communication was received from the city clerk of the filing of the Boston Redevelopment Authority of the First Amendment to the report and decision on the Old Colony Phase 3B, Chapter 121A project.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Dockets 0227 through 0247 will be placed on file. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action.
Sorry about that. Docket number 0130, home rule petition for a special law regarding an act authorizing the City of Boston to offer early voting in municipal elections.
Councilor Flaherty, Chair of the Committee on Government Operations, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. On behalf of the committee, just ask that matter be kept in the committee. I know that we have some other election-related matters that, as President of the Council, you've asked us to submit those together, but we had a very informative hearing led by the two lead sponsors, our colleague, City Councilor Josh Sakin and City Councilor Kim Janey. During the hearing, we discussed ways to encourage greater participation in the election process, particularly the success of early voting for the most recent state election. The committee discussed the cost, the implementation of early voting at the city level, as well as staffing matters. Commissioner Dion Irish and Sabino Piemonte from the city's election department offered testimony in support of early voting, and they estimated the cost would be somewhere in the vicinity of $380,000. They also noted that the election department would like a 6-month advanced timeline to effectively implement early voting. So it's important for those that have any election-related matters that are either in my committee or other committees to try to maybe get these things vetted and have a hearing in a very short term so we can put the package together and get it up to Beacon Hill. So with that, through the chair, if the lead sponsors have anything additional to add, I'm asking that this matter remain in committee, but knowing that the feedback we got from all the stakeholders were that they were in support of this, and looking forward to having the council pass it, having the mayor sign it, and getting it sent up to Beacon Hill as soon as possible. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Zachem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Councilor Flaherty for his swiftly scheduling this hearing and administering it, and of course, my co-sponsor, Councilor Janey, and yourself, Madam President, and everyone else who was in support of this. This is one of those great hearings where everyone spoke in favor, both as Councilor Flaherty said, Commissioner Irish, folks from Progressive Massachusetts, from Mass Vote, certainly our colleagues who were able to attend. As the chairman noted, this is somewhat time sensitive, although we are aware that things on Beacon Hill can move slowly. We do want to get this up to them as soon as possible. The goal would be to have this in place for 2019. That is an ambitious goal. We are aware of that, but I think it's important to try, and it's important to make sure that in our elections, which we know can sometimes be particularly low turnout, we give people more options. So happy to work with our colleagues, with the administration, make sure this version and other related legislation gets through the home rule process and set up to Beacon Hill. We need to move swiftly on this in order to have a chance of getting it in place for this fall. So I want to thank you all, for those of you who signed on as co-sponsors, who attended the hearing, and particularly the administration and the advocates for their support of this. It's time we do this in the city of Boston. We've seen how successful it can be in our state and federal elections, and look forward to having it in place for this November. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zachem. Councilor Janey, you want to speak in this matter?
Sure, I'll just add my 2 cents. First, thank you to Councilor Flaherty for holding the hearing, co-sponsors you, Madam President, as well as Councilor Zachem for your leadership on this issue. Just to quote what many of the advocates say, early is easy, so let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. At this time, docket 0130 will remain in the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 0175, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest dated January 14, 2019, for the English High School, Jamaica Plain, the McKinley K-12, Boston, the Curley K-8, the Mary Lyons 9-12, Brighton, the Josiah Quincy Elementary School, and the Dudley Street Neighborhood Charter School in Roxbury.
Councilor Siomo, Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee held its public hearing yesterday, January 29th, and heard testimony from Brian McLaughlin, the Chief of Staff for the Public Facilities Department, as well as John Hanlon, Chief of Operations for Boston Public Schools. The order requests approval to submit a statement of interest to the Mass School Building Authority Accelerated Repair Program to address window, roof, and boiler deficiencies at the following schools that were mentioned by the clerk: English High School, windows; McKinley, roof; the Curley K-8, a roof; Mary Lyons 9-12, boiler; Josiah Quincy Elementary School, windows; and Dudley Street Neighborhood Charter School, windows. The statement of interest is the first step in a process to engage in discussions with the Mass School Building Authority to potential grant funding, which would reimburse the city approximately 65% reimbursement of the cost of qualifying repairs. The proposed repairs will not only materially extend the useful life of the schools and preserve BPS assets, but provide a comfortable and pleasant environment more conducive to learning. It will also provide energy-efficient and cost-saving upgrades, which will result in direct operational savings for the school district. Since 2015, the city has been able to avail itself of $117 million in reimbursements from the Mass School Building Authority programs for much-needed renovations at city schools. I recommend passage of docket 0175.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. At this time, Councilor Siomo, who's the chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0175. All those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0175 has been passed. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 0248, Councilor Garrison offered the following order for hearing to discuss the need for more civics education in our Boston Public Schools beyond the current minimal half-year requirement.
Councilor Garrison, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Among my several priorities and plans as a member of the Boston City Council includes not just in a general way to say we want to strengthen our public schools in the city of Boston, but find concrete and specific ways to help educate our children and young people in a holistic way. I therefore propose a hearing to discuss mandating at least a year more of American civics to be taught in all our Boston public school system. According to the Center of American Progress, only 9 states and the District of Columbia require 1 year U.S. government of civics. Massachusetts and Boston, by extension, not being one of them. 31 states only require a half year of civics of U.S. government education, of which Massachusetts is included. While federal education policy has focused on improving academic achievement in reading and math, this has come at the expense of a broader curriculum. Most states and local school districts have dedicated insufficient class time to understand the basic functions of government at the expense of other courses. State civic curriculums as heavy on knowledge but light on building skills. An agency for civic engagement, an example of standards for civics and U.S. government courses found that 32 states and the District of Columbia provide the more basic instructions. An American democracy in comparison to other systems of government, the history of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, an explanation of mechanism for public participation and instructions on state and local voting. Policies, however, no state have experimental learning or local problem-solving components expounded upon their civic requirements. Additionally, the Annenberg Public Policy Center at the University of Pennsylvania cites these staggering statistics. More than half of Americans, 53%, incorrectly think it is accurate to say that immigrants who are here illegally do not have any rights under the U.S. Constitution. More than a third of those surveyed, 37%, can't name any of the rights guaranteed under the First Amendment. Only a quarter of Americans, 26%, can name all 3 branches of government. I propose that we open up the conversation and work with our City Hall education cabinets. Although the position of chief is sadly still vacant, the Boston Public Schools Superintendent and the Boston School Committee to consider changing our half-year mandatory civics classes requirement to at least 1 year, and perhaps even more than that. Currently, events in our country and recent national elections only highlight how important it is that we educate and instruct our young people about how government ought to work, given our history and goals of progress that we all share. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Garrison. I would say take it in, because that won't happen again, I don't think. Thank you, Councilor Garrison. Anyone else looking to speak on this docket or add their name? Okay. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zachem, as well as the chair. Docket 0248 will be assigned to the Committee on Education.
Thank you. Docket number 0249, Councilors Flynn and Zachem offer the following resolution in support of International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Councilor Zachem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank our good colleague, Councilor Flynn, for working on this and taking a leadership role on making sure that this body does recognize International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which was a few days ago. It marks the day of the liberation of Auschwitz, which was the largest Nazi concentration or death camp in the Holocaust. And as you see in front of you, the resolution is brief, but it falls into some of what Councilor Garrison was saying about civics education and history, and making sure that we are learning the lessons of the past. And remembering that this was not just an organized slaughter of Jews, but also of people in the LGBTQ community, people with disabilities, anyone who was considered undesirable by the Nazi government in Germany in World War II. And that's something that over and over again we grapple with as elected officials, as citizens in what's supposed to be a civil democracy, and we need to keep working on that. And we need to reflect on the continued battle for human rights and civil rights, and remembering the past and thinking about the future. And as we talk about, our current debates in this country around immigration, on building walls, on keeping people out, on deportations, on folks who don't belong here, or that some people say don't belong here in our country. And as someone who is the grandson of refugees from the Holocaust, who remembers and reading this history, some of the things again and again, sort of almost you can change the cast of characters, but the words and actions are often the same. As we start going down this path of some people shouldn't be in our schools, some people can't come in this country, let's encourage them to emigrate. And then let's force them to emigrate. And then let's just not let people into this country or that country altogether. So it's always timely, given the state of our world and of our democracy, but I think especially right now. So I can't say enough how much I want to thank Councilor Flynn for his partnership and his leadership on this. We're going to ask that we suspend and adopt this resolution, as we're already a couple days late because the council didn't actually meet on Remembrance Day. But it's an important opportunity, I think, to reflect and talk about what we continue need to do, what this body has done and will do in the future on human rights and civil rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zachem. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I want to say thank you to Councilor Zachem on his important leadership on this issue. We are here today to remember 6 million Jews that were killed by a terrible government in Europe, in Germany, and in Poland. I had the opportunity as a young kid to visit Auschwitz and several other concentration camps, and had the opportunity to visit these museums, and I saw firsthand the hatred that people had for mostly for Jews, but for people that were different. And I think it's so important that Councilor Zachem provided exceptional leadership on this, because not only are we remembering the people that were killed during the Holocaust, we're also recommitted to making sure that not only it doesn't happen again, but to treat everybody fairly, to treat everybody with respect and dignity. I think that's what this city council and the city has always done. It's always been there for people that are different, for our immigrant community, for our disabled community, for people that might have a different religion than us. But it's important for us to stand up as we have for so many years and remember this day, but recommit ourselves to making sure that we try to treat everybody fairly, with respect and with dignity. And I'm also proud that several members of the Jewish Community Relations Council is also here with us, and they're also on the forefront of making sure that this message gets out to everybody, but also their message as well is to be supportive of immigrants, be supportive of people that are different than us, and try to treat everybody fairly and with respect and dignity. Thank you, Madam President.
Excuse me. Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter, add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Siomo, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Sabi George, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Garrison, Councillor Janey, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Wu, as well as the Chair. At this time, Councillors Zachem and Flynn seek suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0249. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0249 has been adopted.
Docket number 0250, Councilors Wu and O'Malley offer the following: an ordinance protecting local wetlands and promoting climate change adaptation in the city of Boston.
Councillor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm really excited to continue partnering with Councilor O'Malley in refiling this ordinance from last session with just a few tweaks to make some clarifications based on the hearing that we had several months ago at this point. I like to talk about this ordinance as one that is actually very tangible to the city. When you say wetlands, it kind of, you envision a part, a climate that you might not associate, or an ecosystem you might not associate with Boston. But the reality is that every single district in the city, each one of our districts has portions of land that would fall under this. And this also is an opportunity to give tremendous tools to the City of Boston, and in particular our Conservation Commission, in thinking about our climate future. Just as this council worked with the administration to authorize community choice energy and took the biggest, fastest single step we could take to transition to renewable energy, this would be the fastest, largest single step we could take in empowering our resiliency efforts around development in the city. We're in a booming market, and as we're having those conversations with residents about how to balance economic development and physical development with open space, with flooding realities, with affordable housing, we need to have more tools in our basket. And Boston is actually behind in this area in not seizing these tools that the state makes available. We're one of only 3 Massachusetts municipalities along the coast that has not adopted a local wetlands ordinance. And the administration and the council have been having a conversation for many years now about how best to do this for the city. Chief Cook has been incredible in engaging and reached out just before we refiled this to say that he's looking forward to making sure we're sitting down with our coalition and all of the colleagues in crafting something that works for Boston. But the bottom line is that we have to start meshing all of our actions when it comes to climate change. We can't have one set of plans around resiliency and then another set of decision-making criteria for individual developments that come up. It has to be one and the same, and the Conservation Commission is already doing that work. This ordinance, Councilor Zachem commented that we might have used a few more trees in printing it than we should have. It is very long, it has a lot of definitions, but essentially it would expand the purview of the Conservation Commission to include more area, as well as change how they make their decisions to allow them to consider climate change resiliency as a value to protect. So we're talking not just about land that physically abuts wetlands or is right next to it, although that is dispersed throughout the city. We are talking about every place where having more of a conversation about development could protect against future flooding, could make sure that we're best preparing our residents to have a sustainable and livable future in the city. So lastly, and most importantly, I want to thank our coalition of advocates that has come together from around the city. Frank O'Brien is representing many people in the chamber today, but we have folks from East Boston and Roslindale and Hyde Park and Jamaica Plain and Roxbury and all over. So really looking forward to having this conversation and putting one more accomplishment under this council's belt in saying that we stood up the best we could to creating a livable future for our kids and the kids to come after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to first thank my dear colleague and friend, the at-large councilor from Roslindale, for once again her partnership on this. This is a refile. She encapsulated the purpose quite nicely, so I will be somewhat brief. Also wanted to thank David Morgan, who was a policy fellow in the lead sponsor's office this summer, who really put some great work into this and really drafted this remarkable piece of legislation. When we talk about sustainability, when we talk about the single greatest culprit for greenhouse gas emissions in the city of Boston, it is buildings. And we have this realization in the midst of one of the largest building booms in Boston's history. Yesterday, the city officially received the Carbon-Free Boston report, and the fact that more than 70% of greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings in the city of Boston shows that when we talk about building, that's a way that we can actually address it and fix it and really get to work. That's why I've been so honored to work with so many of you on net zero carbon. The other part of that coin, or part of that equation, would be zoning and using tools that we have at our disposal but we haven't yet used in terms of sustainability, in terms of building what's right. And nothing can really address that more quickly, more succinctly, and more effectively than actually implementing a local wetlands ordinance. As my colleague said, we are one of 3 cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth, coastal cities or towns, that does not take advantage of this. There have been local wetlands ordinances on the books in places around the Commonwealth since the early 1960s, since before many of us in this room were born. It is high time that we do it. The benefits of wetlands are too numerous to list, but obviously they reduce pollutants, they offer a storm buffer, they reduce soil erosion, they provide habitat for many plant and wildlife. It's important that we are really methodical in terms of how we build, what we build, to not only make sure that we build something that's as sustainable as humanly possible, but also as energy efficient as humanly possible. So again, I'm excited to have this opportunity to continue to work with all of my colleagues on this. I'm delighted that the mayor is really interested in working with Chief Cook to craft something that really makes sense, that's going to really be effective. Thank you to the coalition partners for getting us here. I'm looking forward to getting to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Flaherty, you have the
Please
floor.
add my name, Madam President.
Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, I was going to say Councilor Sakam, as well as the chair. Docket 0250 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 0252, Councilor Flaherty offered the following.
0251.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Excuse me. Thank you. Docket 0251, Councilors Edwards and Asabi George offered the following order for a hearing, for a working session regarding payments in lieu of tax agreements with the City of Boston.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you. This is an attempt to continue our conversation on pilot payments. We had a wonderful hearing, actually, where we discussed how pilot payments, payments in lieu of taxes by some of our richest neighbors in Boston, are still not meeting the requirements and are still not actually getting to the goals that we set as a city with them in 2012. This is continuing that conversation. I want to thank the colleagues who were here at that time, Councilor Flaherty, who was one of them, who led the charge actually in saying we need to do better by our communities. You are not only here educating our kids, educating the future of Boston, but also you need to make sure that you are contributing. As you are educating, you're also taking, you're using our teas, you're living in our housing. So as a result, the pilot payments seem like a wonderful balance to make sure that they contributed. And I want to acknowledge good work when it's done. We did see a jump in the contributions from 65% to 81% just last year, actually with the pilot payments, with many of these institutions contributing more of their fair share. But the fact is that's not 100%. And the fact is that 81% is based off of numbers and property tax values from 2011. And that's a problem, because we really are not seeing the true amount of money that we are missing as a city. We are not seeing that because we do not assess the property that is tax exempt on an annual basis. We haven't actually done a full assessment of all the property that's tax exempt since 2009, so that's 10 years ago. We need to do that again, plus we need to make sure that when we're calculating numbers for the amount of tax dollars that we're not getting, we need to do that based off of the tax numbers and assessments in 2019 standards. We do that for everyday Bostonians. My taxes go up, as does everyone else's, on an annual basis, because we assess the values of our properties on an annual basis. We're asking that when it comes to pilot payments, that we do the same thing. So this working session is not just about continuing the debate about how we can actually force more of the payments. This is also about the administration and the city council working together to do some practical, immediate first steps. First, be transparent and honest about how much money we're actually not getting based off of 2019 standards. Just put that out there. Second, we need to make sure that when we talk about community benefits, that the city is defining them very clearly, and that the city defines them through the community lens. That we convene a workshop or individuals coming together to say, as the community, these are actual benefits that we need and want. They are not defined right now, as we saw when many of the community benefit reports came in and one nonprofit said, our benefit to you is the fact that our kids are not going to BPS. There you go, there's your benefit. That's embarrassing, and I think it's insulting. And it's what we allow right now. We need to set the standards for what our community benefits are. I don't care if it's 10 things, but the community define them and say that's how you make your community benefits. And during the hearing, I brought up the fact that, you know, there's one time maybe that I've agreed with this administration in DC, and that is their decision to tax the endowment of some of our richest institutions, such as Harvard, which has the largest endowment, I think, in the world behind the Catholic Church. And that decision was one that I agree with because I felt it was an actual taking of leadership and acknowledging that that institution is paying more in its hedge fund managers than it is in its pilot payments to the city of Boston. So it has the money. And that is not in an educational purpose, managing their hedge fund. So if that administration in DC can take that leadership, I would hope, and I did ask, that this administration in Boston would at least look at what it would take. Have the legal department assess, write a memo, do something about taxing the endowment of local nonprofits. If the administration in DC can say their nonprofit status is not enough anymore for the IRS to avoid taxing their endowments, I don't know why the city of Boston cannot. I don't even know why we're not curious about that. So those are concrete, immediate steps the administration can take, short of getting into the back and forth about how to make sure these institutions are paying. And so this working session is, again, an invitation for them to come to that table to talk about those concrete, immediate steps, community-led, making sure we're clear about the numbers, and also making sure that we are very clear that we should be considering possibly taxing, if not forcing those payments in some way, shape, or form. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Councilor Edwards for her partnership in this work. And what I'd like to add to Councilor Edwards' comments as we prepare for this working session is that we're also preparing in the next 2 months for our city's budget process. And we know that during that process, we talk quite a bit about the reliance we have as a city on property tax, and about 70% of our budget is property tax, and we continue, as Councilor Edwards said, we go back and we reassess personal property across our city regularly, and we need to make sure that we're doing the same when it comes to our nonprofit institutions, cultural centers, universities, hospitals, everybody that's doing business in this city, but not required to pay taxes on that property. So there's an important need to get back to the table, and this working session order does that. I think it also will highlight the need to bring the parties back together, to re-energize, to renew, to reconvene the original pilot task force, to bring those parties back to the table, to make sure that the right people are there having conversations and advocating for what we need in our city when it comes to these partnerships. And, you know, just like our tax-paying residents and property owners in the city of Boston, our nonprofit partners rely on public works, other city resources, infrastructure, fire, police. You know, all of those things come when they're called. And so this, for us, this calling of this working session, the continuing of the work, is really a call for fairness when it comes to assessment, when it comes to fairness and partnership, and the need for these partners to be at the table and fulfilling their commitment that they made so many years ago and re-energizing it. So I look forward to the immediate work ahead on this hearing order. I look forward to some of the immediate responses, some of the small incremental things we can do very quickly and hope to do very quickly in partnership with the administration and with the Pilot Action Group, with our community, with our nonprofit partners, who have varying degrees of participation in Pilot as it is right now. So I look forward to that and look forward to the work ahead with all of you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. Councilor Zakhem, you have the floor.
Thank you,
Bless
Madam President. I want to thank our good colleagues, the District Council from East Boston, the at-large council from Dorchester, for bringing this order forward. It's incredibly important. It's something that, as was alluded to earlier, this has been ongoing for decades in the city of Boston. It is great and wonderful that we have these institutions here that are educating people, that are helping with our economy, that are what the heck that is, that are helping the economic growth in the city of Boston, but they need to pay their fair share. And what's most striking to me are two aspects of this. One, we have some institutions who have done a lot of what's asked. I don't think, a lot of, as far as educational and cultural institutions go, they're not meeting their 100% requirement, but there is a range, and there shouldn't be. Everyone should be meeting their obligations. We have folks like at Boston University who are getting closer to where they should be. They're not there yet. We have other institutions in my own district, at Northeastern University in particular, that repeatedly fall short. And that is a repeated issue when I talk to constituents in Mission Hill, when I talk to folks in the Fenway and the Symphony area who do suffer some of the day-to-day quality of life impacts of institutional expansion, but it is an issue of fairness. The city of Boston, alone amongst our peer cities, is hugely dependent on real estate property taxes for our revenue, 70%. None of our peer cities are close. You look at Chicago, New York, Seattle, there may be half at best. This is vital for the city of Boston. While it is a voluntary program, and I do think that's a problem that it's voluntary, we can do better, but we need to update these valuations. As we heard earlier, this is based on valuations almost a decade ago. I know many of my constituents would be very happy to be paying their real estate taxes based on valuations of a decade ago. We reached a reasonable agreement through a reasonable process of the pilot working group about a decade ago, and it was based on 25% of what the assessed property taxes would otherwise be. If that's a valid agreement, then it is now, and we should update that. So that's number one. That's the most important first step, and also standardizing how we're judging the other community benefits. This is hugely important to the city's fiscal health, to fairness, to issues of equity. We have so many people, and this comes up over and over again, particularly in some of the neighborhoods I represent, where young people in our communities are literally looking across the street at gleaming towers, whether it's dormitories, whether it's lab or classroom space. And that's great. We want that here. But we need to be sharing the wealth. We need to make sure that people who are growing up across the street from Northeastern University have an opportunity to attend Northeastern University, have an opportunity to benefit from some of the revenue that's going there. So that's a long way of saying I offer my wholehearted support. I'd like to add my name. We need to do better on this in a fair and transparent way, and that's what should be happening. And the first step to that is reassessing these property values. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Zakhem. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Rise to have my name added. Look forward to the working session, and through the chair would suggest, or at least offer to the makers, and it's something that I would be willing to propose at the working session, is that we revisit a standalone committee on the City Council for pilot. The city and the council's best results have been when we had a standalone committee on pilot reform. It was one that I had created on the council. It worked and paid great dividends to the tune of tens of millions of additional dollars to the city coffers. I've met with the advocates on it. I know the advocates want to sort of have a citizens commission, if you will, which obviously is great, but presidents of the colleges and universities aren't going to meet with them. Heads of the government affairs, folks aren't going to show the books to them, but they will show it to this council. If we call it an order for a hearing, or we have a meeting here in the chamber, presidents and CEOs of our colleges, universities, and heads of government affairs will show up and will be forthright with that information. So in addition to getting those assessed values at a quicker pace, I think having a standalone committee on this body for whether it's, we can call it pilot reform, we can call it pilot tracking, we call it anything you want, but having everyone's attention and having this body being able to gavel in presidents and CEOs of these schools would be tremendous help to getting the answers that we need, and to also finding out who's giving and who's stepping up to the plate and who's not. So I offer that, just food for thought. It would require a rule change because the rules were set forth by you, Madam President, it would require two-thirds of majority to change the rules, to add an additional committee during the middle of a year. So again, just food for thought. Look forward to working with the sponsors on it, but I can just assure you, and I know Madam Clerk at the time, she had a front row seat to it as well. We were having a hard time getting the college universities and the other nonprofits, our hospitals and others to comply and to come forward. But when we had that standalone committee and we had public hearings in this very chamber, they showed up. And if they didn't show up, we went looking for them. We had subpoena powers to get them here. So thank you, Madam President. Look forward to working with the lead sponsors.
Would you like to add your name, Councilor Flaherty?
Yes, please.
Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Zachem, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Baker, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Garrison, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, as well as the chair. Docket 0251 will be assigned to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam President. And now, for docket number 0252, Councilor Flaherty offered the following petition for a special law regarding an act providing for residency preference for appointments at the Boston Police and Fire Departments.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, as the chair, moving for suspension of the rules and passage. Docket 0252 is technically a refile that originated in 2014, first as an ordinance, then as a home rule petition. This home rule petition seeks to increase the existing Boston residency preference on civil service exams from 1 year to 3 years. We're all firm believers that our city's police and firefighters, police officers and firefighters do a better job when they're more familiar with our communities. They know the streets, they know the neighborhoods. This proposal has full support of Firefighters Local 17 and the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association, along with the Massachusetts Association of Minority Law Enforcement Officers, known as MAMLEO, and also the Boston Society of Vulcans. The home rule was being refiled due to a technical wording suggestion that came back from the legislature. We were advised to add the language, quote, immediately within line 4 in the first sentence of section 2 to explicitly state that a civil service applicant for BPD and BFD must live in the city of Boston for 3 years prior to them sitting for the examination, so that you wouldn't have a situation where someone might be born at, say, St. Elizabeth's, and they're here for 2-3 years, and then they move out to Weymouth, and they go to Weymouth Public Schools, they play for Weymouth Youth Soccer, Weymouth Little League, and they work in the Weymouth red shirt jobs if they have them, Councilor McCarthy, and then all of a sudden they just think it's a nifty idea to join the Boston Police and the Boston Fire Department, and they come in, put a mattress address down with a relative, and they get on the job. So we had recognized that there was a technical clarification that is needed. So at this point, as the chair, moving for suspension rules and passage, so that they're actually waiting for it, believe it or not. So once we get it up to there, they'll get it passed, and we'll see it take effect immediately. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Anyone else looking to speak on this docket? At this time, Councilor Flaherty, who's it?
May I ask a-
Okay. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Apologize if I'm not familiar about the rules. I wanted to ask a question through the chair to the sponsor. Just wondering who has it at the State House?
So it went through the House, and the House had accepted sort of an oral clarification. However, the Senate did not. So it would be in the respective committees on public safety. It could also, at this point, probably would be more appropriate, probably the bills of third reading at this point, because it's gone through the House with a suggested technical change. They accepted it, went to the Senate. They then sent it back. So when it goes back up there, will it go back to the Senate Public Safety Committee? I'm not sure. Or would it go to House and Senate bills of third reading? But again, they're waiting for it and they're ready to go.
That's way more than I.
Gotcha.
Who's the sponsor? House. Is it sponsored by, who's the senator?
I believe
and
the
rep?
sponsor might have been Representative Jim Hunt. Senator, so I think Jim Hunt may be in the Senate and in the House, and Senator Collins, I believe, in the Senate.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for clarification. At this time, Madam Clerk, can you add the following names? Councilor Baker, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Garrison, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zachem, as well as the chair. At this time, docket 0252, so Councilor Flaherty, who's the chair of the Committee on Government Operations, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0252. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0252 has been passed. Moving right along.
Docket number 0253 has been withdrawn. Docket number 0254, Councilors Janey and Isabi George offer the following order for hearing regarding hypodermic needle safety in and around schools and playgrounds.
Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I also want to acknowledge and thank Councilor Isabi George for your partnership on this issue and for your leadership in advocating for our students as well as around substance abuse disorder and homelessness in our city. I want to also commend the custodians at Orchard Garden School who have to take time out of their schedules to clean the playground outside of the school, which is taking away from them to be able to clean the actual school building. Also want to highlight the work of the Mobile Sharps team, who are doing an incredible job in terms of picking up needles all around our city. But this is an ongoing challenge in our city and a problem, and so we need more support and more resources. As many of you know, there was a student at Orchard Gardens K-8 who was pricked by a discarded needle on the school property. This is not the first time that it's happened. This is an awful thing to have happen to a child, but it is very avoidable. In order for our children to be able to learn, we've got to ensure that they have a safe school environment and that their play areas are clean and don't have litter or needles in them. We need to take every step possible to prevent this from happening again in our future. I'm very proud to stand with the Orchard Garden School community, including their principal, their parents, their teachers, who all took to the streets to call for action and to get more resources for their school so that this doesn't happen again. And while I'm talking about Orchard Garden School, there are other schools, there are other parks, there are other playgrounds that are dealing with this issue. Oftentimes, people are concerned about what's happening at Clifford Park and other playgrounds in our city and throughout the New Market area. With this hearing order, we'll be able to engage the community as well as city officials to see what more we can do so that this unfortunate incident does not happen again. So thank you again for your partnership, and I look forward to working with all of you to explore how we can do more to protect our children and keep our streets clean of needles. Thank you. Thank you,
Councilor Janey. Councilor Isabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Janey, for your leadership in this issue. The topic of school safety is not new to the council floor. It is unfortunate, but I am hopeful that as a body we can take action that will give our current students and future students the safe environments they deserve. School safety is something I've always thought about since I first started teaching, certainly since my 4 boys started school. It has become even more important today. A safe community must exist inside and outside of a school building. A safe school environment is more than locks and training. It is about creating a community that is safe and welcoming. Needles are a daily threat to the safety and well-being of children and the community at large. We need to do more to ensure that all of our schools, playgrounds, and communities are kept safe and clean. We also need to have a better understanding of the real number of children and school faculty who may have been exposed and stuck by sharps and needles that they have found in and around their schools. So I do look forward to a more immediate hearing on this, as school safety in general is top of mind for many of us, or if not all of us, here in this chamber and across our city. So I do look forward to that hearing and to that hearing soon. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councilor Janey.
Thank you, Councilor Isabi George. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Garrison, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakhem, as well as the Chair. Docket 0254 will be assigned to the Committee on Education.
Docket number 0255, Councilor Janey offered the following order for a hearing on services provided to residents following fires in the city of Boston.
Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just last night, a fire displaced 16 residents in my district and injured 1. Last week, another fire displaced 5, and tragically, 1 person was killed. Fires are destructive, they're devastating, they result in massive property loss, death, injury, Whenever there's a fire, I always try to reach out to the families to ensure that they know their rights and what resources are available to them, and to offer my support. And I do so through the lens of someone who has been there. So when my daughter was 3 years old, we had a fire, a very scary event. We were home at the time. Fortunately, it was during the day. I made a bad judgment call and went back upstairs to get photo albums because the fire was way down the hall, and I thought I had plenty of time. I think we all underestimate how quickly fires move. Fortunately, I was able to get her out and myself out safely, but that is not anything that anyone should ever do. My sister experienced a fire when she was pregnant with her youngest son, was displaced. My mom, just in 2012, was displaced. All 3 fires that I'm speaking of in my family, we were all displaced, and only in my mom's case was she able to move back. So there are a lot of things that families have to, or individuals have to deal with, not just loss of property, what they're going to do next. They're missing time from work to deal with these issues. There are costs associated with trying to move, and it's just very traumatic and very overwhelming. I do appreciate the work that the city is doing. We've got departments within our city as well as agencies throughout our neighborhoods who respond to fires. I certainly want to applaud the fire department and EMS. They were incredible all the times that I experienced fires firsthand through my family, and I know that this is just incredible work that only heroes could possibly do. I also want to acknowledge the city, Neighborhood Services, the Office of Housing Stability, the Boston Housing Authority, and all that they do to make sure that families can quickly find more permanent housing when they're displaced from fires. And then obviously folks like the Red Cross for the amazing work that they do. And oftentimes, renters have even more of a burden in terms of just not understanding their rights. If they don't have renter's insurance, it's incredibly difficult for them. And so I just think it's important for us to have this conversation. I know that there's often an uptick in fires during the winter months, that it's just so important that we all understand what resources are available and making sure that we're doing all that we can to support any residents who experience such a horrific an event in their life. And so I look forward to engaging city departments as well as all of you and residents throughout our city so that we can just make sure that all of the resources are being coordinated in such a way to provide the supports that a family may need when they go through this experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Garrison, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakhem, as well as the chair. Docket 0255 will be assigned to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice.
Docket number 0256, Councilor Asabi George offers the following order for a hearing regarding the results of the annual homeless census.
Councilor Asabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. As I mentioned in our opening remarks earlier today, today marks the 39th annual homeless census. Volunteers, along with Mayor Walsh, will go through all of the neighborhoods of Boston to survey and offer shelter and services to people staying on the street. The homeless census counts people in 2 ways. First, it tracks how many people are using services like emergency shelters, transitional housing, and treatment programs. Second, the city collects information about household demographics, income level, family size, and the community of origin for each person. Together, this data helps us understand who we are serving and what the gaps in our services are. It helps us understand our priorities so we can design even better policies. Census results also inform federal funding and help measure progress in our efforts to prevent and end homelessness. Convening a hearing will allow the city to examine the results of the 2019 homeless census, its changes over time, and identify gaps in methodology of collecting data to ensure that we have the best system in place to track and support those experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Asabi George. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Counselor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I want to say thank you to my colleague, Councilor George, for her leadership on this important issue. I always enjoy attending the census count. I attended it when I was young and looking forward to joining tonight. I also want to thank the Mayor Walsh and his administration, especially on homeless veterans, making sure that our returning veterans have a place to live. I know Court Street, New England Center for Homeless Veterans does an excellent job, but also the mayor and his administration have also done an excellent work in making sure that our veterans are treated fairly, have an opportunity to engage in mental health counseling, engage in housing services. So I'm looking forward to joining some of my colleagues tonight, and I'd like to add my name to that as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor Flynn. Madam Clerk, if you could add Counselor Flynn, as well as Counselor Edwards, Counselor Flaherty, Counselor Garrison, Counselor Janey, Counselor McCarthy, Counselor O'Malley, Counselor Wu, Counselor Zachem, as well as the Chair, and Counselor Baker. Docket 0256 will be assigned to the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery.
Docket number 0257, Counselor Asabi George offered the following order for hearing to examine mental health and suicide prevention resources in the city of Boston.
Counselor Asabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Madam President. I am refiling an important hearing order to examine mental health and suicide prevention resources in the city of Boston. Nearly 2 months ago, I held a hearing with 13 practitioners from leading hospitals, universities, and advocacy organizations to discuss the impact of mental health and suicide on Boston residents. Each panelist spoke about their own experience with their patients, but many of the themes were consistent. First, mental health and suicide is a public health crisis in the city. Second, there are not enough providers for those that need services. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, Massachusetts is identified as a state with a shortage of mental health care professionals, with only 42% of the need met. Third, insurance and Medicaid reimbursement for mental health services are so low that many providers are choosing not to accept insurance. This disproportionately affects low-income patients. It is also troubling to know the challenges families have faced when trying to access services for their children. Lastly, there is a trend that it is more profitable to cut mental health services because of that low reimbursement rate and add different services to any clinical panel. I will work with my colleagues at the State House to advocate for mental health parity in order to ensure that providers have the resources they need to treat our residents. Our residents and our resident children deserve to access a comprehensive and affordable services in mental health. I look forward to continuing these conversations and finding solutions to these pressing issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Asabi George. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Counselor Edwards, Counselor Flaherty, Counselor Flynn, Counselor Garrison, Counselor Janey, Counselor O'Malley, Counselor Wu, Counselor Zachem, as well as the Chair. Docket 0257 will be assigned to the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery.
Docket number 0258, Counselor Asabi George offered the following order for a working session regarding the opioid crisis.
Counselor Asabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you. Once again, Madam President, I will try to keep this short. This is, again, a refile to convene a collaborative working session to tackle the opioid crisis. As the opioid crisis continues to persist and lives continue to be lost, the need for collaboration deepens. It is through strong partnerships between local, state, and federal agencies that change will occur. Last year, we held 2 successful working sessions with members of the State House and the City Council to find points of collaboration regarding the opioid crisis. As the State House moves into its new legislative session, it will be imperative to advocate for increased funding for on-the-ground prevention, treatment, and recovery solutions. We also know, and it's noted in this hearing order, that we need to make sure that we're exploring and analyzing all opportunities to address the opioid epidemic, including a feasibility study of a public health surge targeting major encampments, reducing criminal activity, supporting the unsheltered population, responding to the needs, the the quality of life needs, both for those that are experiencing substance use disorders as well as those living in the communities that are impacted by the effects and the impacts of that disorder, as well as improving access to treatment, increasing the number of treatment beds, and making sure that we have adequate point-of-time connection services. We also need to make sure that we're talking about a conversation we've had here at the City Council previously regarding safe injection facilities or safe consumption sites, as well as a presentation of our work. A small group of us went to Vancouver to visit some of their facilities, and we'd like to present that to the council and to the public. This working session will give us that opportunity and formalize some of our work that we need to be and should be and continuing to do together. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Asabi George. Anyone looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakem, as well as the Chair. Docket 0258 will be assigned to the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery.
Docket number 0259, Councilors Campbell and Asabi George offer the following order for a hearing to examine plans to reconstruct the Long Island Bridge and reopen service facilities.
Well, Councilor Asabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I was expecting you to go first, but again, this is a refile from a hearing we had towards the end of last year, and we will sort of continue with that work, but also make sure that we have at this hearing, once scheduled, that we've heard updates from the city regarding the some of the challenges that we're facing with the permit process, where we are in current litigation that is being pursued by the city of Quincy. How many, what are the programs that we're expecting to see out there? What are the number of recovery beds? We know recovery beds are a really important piece to the work that lies ahead. What are the services that will be planned for Long Island? And I think the answer that we all are looking for, when will Long Island be open? When can we see services out there? Because as we go about the city of Boston, regardless of the neighborhood, the question is often asked, when is Long Island going to be open? Because we see that as an answer, or at least one of the answers to the problems that we face when considering the opioid crisis. So I look forward to that work ahead, getting back to it, and hopefully finding and hearing the news that Quincy has come to its senses and realizes that Long Island is an important piece to the puzzle when we talk about recovery, not just for residents in the city of Boston, but residents of the region, residents of the Commonwealth, residents of the city of Quincy. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Asabi George, and thank you for the partnership. Clearly, this is a refile and an opportunity for all of us to stay abreast of these conversations. Anyone looking to speak on this matter or add their name? So for Madam Clerk, for docket 0259, can you please add Councilor Baker, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Garrison, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakem, and Councilor McCarthy. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam President. Quickly, I want to thank the sponsors. I also just want to, as we talked, Councilor Asabi George mentioned Vancouver, and I was one of the group that went there. But I just want to stress again, as we go into this refile and go into this hearing, and we've all agreed, this is an opportunity not just for Boston, but this is an opportunity for the Commonwealth to step up. It just can't be Boston's bill. It has to be the surrounding towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that have got to help us, because the people who are in need are from Provincetown out to Mount Greylock. It's not just Boston that's suffering, but we have so many facilities and we have so many hospitals and so much outreach that people from all over come here, and the people in the surrounding towns go, thank you very much, Boston. And it always comes down to us supporting. So this has to be an effort for all the communities and all the towns, and I look forward to working with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as well.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. At this time, Madam Clerk, if you could actually, because this docket, and we've gotten out of this habit, was previously jointly assigned, we're going to continue to keep it in both those committees. So docket 0259 will be jointly assigned to the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health and Recovery, and Planning, Development, and Transportation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Docket number 0260, Councilor Janey offered the following order for public hearing on eliminating the opportunity and achievement gaps in the Boston Public Schools.
Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So I know several hearing orders have been introduced to this body or from this body in the past regarding the achievement gap in Boston Public Schools. When I was an advocate doing work on education issues, I've worked with my predecessor as well as his predecessor on this issue, as well as Councilor John Connolly when he chaired the Education Committee on this issue. So this is not a new issue. This, unfortunately, is an issue that has been lingering for far too long, and it's time that we do more and all we can to eliminate opportunity and achievement gaps so that all of our students, all of our young people are truly prepared for career in college when they graduate. What we saw in the Globe report last week or the week before were just these disparities. And despite being the top of your class, there were so many young people who unfortunately were not able to finish college. They were not prepared to finish college. Some found themselves homeless. And for me, it was just kind of a call to action to say, now is the time to introduce this hearing order again, to bring all people to the table. Advocates that I've had the great pleasure of working with, like the Lawyers for Civil Rights, ACLU, NAACP, the Black Educators Alliance in Massachusetts, certainly all of the amazing teachers who are doing incredibly hard work every single day with very limited resources, making sure that we're engaging the council, engaging the mayor's office, the superintendent, the school committee, anyone and everyone. We know that the data is staggering, either from that Globe report, if we're just looking at MCAS scores, and we know that standardized tests don't tell the whole story when we're talking about school quality. But what they do show is certainly a persistent gap that often widens and certainly affects some of our most vulnerable students even more, whether those are students with disabilities, students who are English language learners, some of our immigrant children, children who come from poor communities, and it's time that we do all that we can and continue to keep this at the forefront of everything that we do. So that we are making some progress here. In 2016, I'm sure you all know that the school committee adopted unanimously a policy on eliminating the opportunity and achievement gaps in Boston Public Schools, and it's time that we check in to see where they are in terms of implementation and what has happened, what hasn't happened, and what is needed to make sure that we are, in fact, making progress in this area. So thank you for your work, and I look forward to engaging with all of you as we have this important conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Anyone looking to add their name or speak on this matter? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Garrison, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zachem, as well as the Chair. Docket 0260 will be assigned to the Committee on Education.
Docket number 0261, Councilors Zachem and Campbell offer the following resolution, urging extension of temporary protected status for Nepal.
Councilor Zachem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for your partnership on this important resolution. This is in many ways similar to resolutions this body has passed earlier this year, last year, the year before, probably the year before that. Temporary protected status is an important designation from the Department of Homeland Security that is based on the situation in an immigrant's home country, either because of political unrest, civil war, famine, natural disaster, that their home country is dangerous to be in and to return to. It provides people work authorization and a legal status here in the United States, and there are tens of thousands of people with TPS from various countries in Boston and the greater Boston area. Particular issue around Nepal came about because of a woman who wrote to me out of desperation as a last resort because her younger sister has TPS here in the States right now, here in Boston, is pursuing a graduate degree at Northeastern University and is essentially at their wit's end. And they said, you know, we don't know if there's anything you can do. We don't know if there's anything anyone can do under the current climate. And, you know, I'm sad to say this is all we can do in the Boston City Council, is to lend our voice in this struggle for these folks who are here, who are working, who are studying, and whose home countries are too dangerous to return to because of earthquake, because of natural disaster. So we're calling on the Trump administration, on the Department of Homeland Security once again to extend temporary protected status because that's what the law says it should be done. This is about following the law. There is discretion in federal law to the President, to the Department of Homeland Security, but the standards are pretty clear. If someone's home country is too dangerous to return to, TPS should be extended, and they should be able to stay here. So I won't belabor the point because we have talked about this over and over again, because I think all of us are sadly becoming familiar with the details of temporary protected status with many other immigration classifications due to the Trump administration's continual undermining of the rule of law and the welcoming place that this country should be. So I'm asking that we suspend and adopt this resolution, make sure we send it to Washington, inform our congressional delegation, and do everything we can to do this, and hope that some wisdom, that might be too much to hope for, but maybe some fairness and justice in Washington will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zakhem, and thank you for the partnership. I, too, received that email and some other calls with respect to folks thinking that this country was sort of left off the list. And it's sad that we have to revisit this again. But I appreciate the work that you continue to do, and I appreciate the partnership. At this time, anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Oh, excuse me. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Councilor Zakhem and Council President Campbell. I had the opportunity this week, maybe it's somewhat related, but I had the opportunity this week to join Councilor Edwards at a community forum in Dorchester on a similar situation that's happening to the Vietnamese community. And a lot of these Vietnamese came over here after the communist government, after the war in Vietnam, and settled into Dorchester. I know Councilor Clerk Feeney was welcoming, and the whole Dorchester community were welcoming to the Vietnamese community in Dorchester. But a similar situation is happening, and I agree with Councilor Zakhem that we need to stand up and be there for our immigrant community. They're contributing so much to our city, contributing so much to our country. And I'm proud that Boston has always been a city of immigrants. Even this Saturday, we had an event in the South Boston waterfront. I believe there were about 2,000 Vietnamese residents that came for a festival, and they were talking about how proud they are to be here in the United States. They're contributing every day. The mayor was there, Councilor Wu was there, and it's an honor for me to not only be part of that event on Saturday, but to work with the colleagues here on the City Council. You have really been in the forefront of representing human rights and civil rights for so many years, so I'd just like to add my name as well, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flynn as well as Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Cheney, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakhem, as well as the Chair. At this time, the Chair, as well as Councilor Zakhem, seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0261. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0261 has been passed.
Docket number 0262, Councilor Flaherty offered the following notice, which was received from the Community Preservation Committee on the reappointment of Matthew Kiefer to the Community Preservation Committee for a term expiring January 1st, 2022.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0262 is a letter that's addressed to Madam Clerk acknowledging the City Council's Committee on Community Preservation would like to reappoint Matt Kiefer to the City's Community Preservation Committee. Matt, as everyone remembers, was one of the 4 council appointments to the Community Preservation Committee, and it was originally appointed for 1 year and took it under the proviso that in the event that everything was working well, he would be reappointed for the three-year term, which ran and expired back in 2018, so he's actually been technically a holdover. It should be noted that the three other appointments serve various staggered terms, so for clarification, the council will be addressing just this appointment and will be addressing the other appointments at a later time when they come up. So given his professional background, the feedback has been tremendous in terms of the value that Matt Kiefer has added to the Community Preservation Committee. His acumen, the amount of time that he's been spending on it, he has perfect attendance, I'm told as well. So given that, I'd like to seek to suspend and pass docket 0262 and continue, reappoint Matt Kiefer to a three-year term and allow him to continue doing the great work that he's doing on the council's behalf as a council representative to the Community Preservation Committee. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, who's chair of the committee, the Community Preservation Committee for the council, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 062. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0262 has been passed. Moving on to personnel orders.
Docket number 0263, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Zachem.
Councilor Zachem seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0263. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0263 has been passed.
Docket number 0264, Councilor Campbell for Councilor
Councilor
Garrison.
Garrison seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0264. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0264 has been passed. Okay, moving on to the green sheets. Anybody wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets may do so now. Councilor Flaherty looking to remove a matter from the green sheets.
254. If there are no objections from my colleagues.
0254. Any objections? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flaherty's name to docket 0254.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Anyone looking to remove a matter from the green sheets? Okay, moving right along. Actually, I think even I've skipped late files, and apparently we have a couple, so my apologies. I'll take it a step backwards. At this time, I'm informed by the clerk that there are two late file matters, which in the absence of objection will be added to today's agenda. Any objections? At this time, the two late file matters will be added to the agenda. Madam Clerk, if you could read the first late file matter, which is a personnel order.
Thank you, Madam President. City of Boston and City Council, January 25th, 2019. Councilor Campbell for Councilor Sabi George.
Councilor Sabi George seeks suspension of the rules and passage of the first late file matter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The first late file matter has been passed.
Second late file matter offered by Councilors Edward Flynn and Councilor Michael Flaherty in the City of Boston and City Council, order for hearing to halt the Article 80 process as it applies to 776 Summer Street. Whereas the 15-acre site at 776 Summer Street has recently been removed from South Boston's designated port area known as DPA, and whereas the South Boston community commercial and maritime industry stakeholders, several state agencies, the International Longshoremen's Union, ILA, and the Boston Carmen's Union, Local 589, and the entire South Boston elected delegation have expressed serious ongoing concerns about the HRP 776 Summer Street LLC's standing to execute this proposal. Now therefore be it ordered that the appropriate committee of the Boston City Council holds a hearing to discuss the halting of Article 80 process as it applies to 776 Summer Street LLC. Representatives from the Boston Planning and Development Agency, Boston Transportation Department, Massport, MassDOT, and other interested parties shall be invited to testify. Filed in the City Council, January 30th, 2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess it's somewhat self-explanatory for those that are familiar with it. We're looking for the BRA to halt the Article 80 process on 776 Summer Street. This is driven by the community. Community members have already spent an extensive amount of time attending meetings on this project, a total of 8 public meetings and 6 impact advisory group meetings. During all of the 14 meetings, community members have expressed serious concerns about many aspects of this project. The entire South Boston delegation, the commercial and maritime industry stakeholders, several state agencies, the International Longshoremen's Union, otherwise known as the ILA, the Boston Commons Union, Local 589, and the South Boston community have all expressed concerns about this proposal. And we learned that within the proposal, they're asking, through the Article 80 process, they're asking to be able to do something that they don't have the right to do. So the question, it begs the question as to why they're in the Article 80 process in the first place. So the community's under siege. There's so many development projects happening. This project has taken everyone's attention away from the growth zone, from the rezoning of Broadway, and other major projects that are happening in and around the neighborhood, and particularly along the South Boston waterfront. So we're just asking for a TV timeout here, and we're hopeful that that TV timeout, the proponents will be able to secure an agreement from Massport. It's the equivalent of me looking to build something on your property when I don't have the ability to do so, but I'm going through the Article 80 process anyways, in hopes that at some point you'll give me the permission to do what I'm looking to do on your land. However, if you decide that you're not going to give me permission, then we've wasted everyone's time, with resources, and more importantly, the anxiety level from folks in the neighborhood has reached an all-time high. They're meetinged out. They're meetinged out. They're also condoed out, but they're meetinged out as well, and this plays a big part of it. So our hope is that we just take a TV timeout, halt the Article 80 process, allow the proponents to go and secure the necessary approvals that they need in order to move forward within the Article 80 process. It's equivalent to putting, again, the cart before the horse. Our hope is that the community will get an opportunity to look at one or two of the alternative proposals that are in the initial submission. But until we get to that point, we're just going to continue to sort of chase our tail on this one. So I join my elected colleagues in an effort to restore some sanity to this process and allow them to secure the appropriate agreements that they need in order to do what they're looking to do. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I think Councilor Flaherty said it best. My community that I represent wants to make sure that they have a voice in this process. They feel like, we have too much development going on. We have so many condos that are going up so fast that we have a transportation system that is not able to get our people from South Boston into downtown Boston. Pedestrian safety is a major concern. So there's a lot of quality of life issues impacting this proposal. And, the people of South Boston have said clearly that they want a halt to this process. They want to learn more, and they need their elected officials to stand with them to make sure that the neighborhood voice is respected and heard at the State House, at City Hall, and at other governmental agencies. Also, we've heard many times from the longshoremen, from the Commons Union. The longshoremen want to protect the working port of Boston that we fought for so long to build up. In the Commons Union want to make sure that we do have a good transportation that works for everybody, that we're able to effectively transport people from South Boston into downtown Boston. We are struggling with that right now. Thank you, Madam President.
No, thank you, Councilor Flynn. At this time, anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Garrison, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Janey, Councilor Wu. The second late file matter will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Moving along to the consent agenda, I am informed by the clerk that there are 2 late file matters, which in the absence of objection will be added to the consent agenda. Seeing and hearing no objections, the matters are so added. The chair moves at this time for adoption of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been adopted. All right, moving on. At this time, if I could ask all guests and councilors and staff to please rise. as we adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Counselor Flaherty, John Collier and Lance Fernair. For Counselor Baker, Jeanette Daly. For Counselor Siomo, Mary Mora O'Brien. For Counselor Edwards, Carmela DiPaolo. For Counselor Janey, Joni Spicer, Viola Ramsey. For Counselor O'Malley, Elizabeth Chabot. For Counselor Zachem, Thomas Hopkins, Celestine Cox. For Counselor Flaherty and Counselor Flynn, Patrice Turner, Eddie Carroll, and Charlie Federico. For Counselors Zachem and O'Malley, Mary Clayton Crozier. For Counselors Baker, Flynn, and Asabi George, Jeanette Boudreau Daly. And for the chair, Thomas Phillips. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in memory of the aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet again in this chamber at the Boston City Hall on the 5th floor on February 6th at noon. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.